products. I want to buy an older product, so I don't have to create all of the pollution that goes into making a new product.
Yes.
Consumers are talking about wanting to be able to resell products or need to take a product working through a retailer for me to sell it to another consumer.
Yes.
And so what retailers are really beginning to do is figure out what the circular economy looks like, because it's a bit more tangible for the consumer.
Well, we've really just begun, and I know I noticed I love commerce when I was a kid. The fun thing that I liked to do was to go into Kmart and just watch. It was like fascinating. How did all this happen? But now I go into a big box store and I kind of look at the product set as like, this is the first phase at the landfill. This is this huge array, an amazing array of stuff. But most of it within a couple of months will be in the landfill. So you're saying that Walmart and Amazon are now taking some of that back and reusing it so that rather than going into the landfill, they have established this resale.
So it's early days and pieces of this, but what I would say is that this circular economy has existed since the very first retailer existed. So go back to the days of the caveman, the cavewoman. There was actually someone trading one product for another, and someone said, "I no longer need this product," and another creative person was like, "I'll take it." That's the circular economy from way back then. We have had Salvation Army, Goodwill, etc., that have existed for 100+ years. What retailers are beginning to do is tap into finding ways to scale those products. So that's beginning to happen. You're looking at refill. Some of the personal care companies are beginning to refill products. When I go to my local pet retailer, I can actually bring my own bucket if I want to refill the dog food, cat litter, stuff of that nature. Yeah. So retailers, they're trying to make it easier for consumers to meet their own sustainability goals. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're heading. And I'll pause there. I know you've got other questions.
Well, one of the questions is, obviously, the retail sector needs to be responsive to consumers, and they need to be responsive to a set of regulations and incentives that they're suggesting. And often the retailer the consumer brand is the first brand that is really blamed for problems that begin across their supply chain. What's the most effective way for NGO leaders and champions for sustainability to engage with your companies, given that there's a lot that they may disagree on, but there may be opportunities as they dialogue to discover solutions?
Wow, what I love about that question is I kind of got into the retail space from the NGO activist perspective originally. And here's all the things that I wish I had known way back then. Retailers don't necessarily have as much control as the activist community thinks. So retailers have the power to influence, but with very few exceptions, they don't have the ability to control what they think. So what I would really encourage anyone who's trying to engage with retailers, you can't just engage with a retailer, you actually need to engage with the entire value chain. Because there are decisions being made by the retailer, suppliers that might actually be creating the adverse impacts you're trying to address. So what retailers do control is which products they choose to put on the shelf. The limitation there is if retailers are only putting the most sustainable product on the shelf, and it's too expensive or it doesn't work as well as consumers expect, they're going to go out of business. And so retailers have to have a nice product mix to make sure they're showing you here's the future, here's where things are headed. But you've got to also cater to the masses as well that might not have been ready for that. So let me invite to the stage Kurt Ritter here from Coca-Cola. Can you come on up, Rick? And this is the first stage in that supply chain. To go from the retailer to the Now, Scott, you're the Chief of Public Affairs, Communications, and Sustainability
North America, and you are something of a change agent in the company, I would have to say. And your influence has spread to several parts of the company. But Coca-Cola is one of the most valuable brands on the planet. And in a way, when I think of Coca-Cola, I think of America. I think of Coca-Cola for some reason, and I'm sure it has something to do with marketing. I'm sure. But there's an association between Coke and America, which means that a lot of your value in the company is the reputation of your brand. And you spend a lot of time making sure that that reputation is the clean one. And obviously, sustainability has become very important to the company. What is Coca-Cola's responsibility to the America that idolizes the brand?
I also heard you refer to empire, so that's always a great introduction. I've heard that before in school classes. I think you're right. Look, I was born and raised in a different country. I come from a country in Northern Europe, Sweden. You can detect that in my accent. That's where it's from. I moved here 22 years ago. I heard some of the English from Arizona State college there. And I've had the privilege of working for the Coca-Cola company for my entire career, which is now almost 19 years. And you're absolutely right. I've certainly come to the appreciation that it's a very young brand. I think we've been part of so many important moments in history, socio-politically. We're a brand that really stands for everybody. There's a famous Andy Warhol quote that talks about just how Coke is really for everybody. It's the same Coke in everybody's hand. So we obviously don't take that lightly, huge responsibility. And when you think about our environmental footprint, some of you heard one of my sort of system teammates, Abraham, who represents the bottling operation here in Texas, and his company is arguably, I would suggest, one of our more leading, forward-leaning, sustainably oriented-minded bottlers that we have. And there's a big responsibility. It's always hard for me. I've only been in this role for 2 years. I've spent my first 16 years, what someone might say, more traditionally in the business. I don't really sometimes that's the stuff that means, but operations, marketing, commercial, and came into sustainability 2 years ago. And probably comparatively to many of you in the audience would say I know the least about environmental sustainability, but what I think is important for a brand like ours is to go from what I like to sometimes refer to as like theoretical ambitions to actual practical implementation. And that requires to move many massive parts of the company with you towards that destination. And so I just consider that a privilege. I think we have an inherent responsibility as a brand to do that to our customers, to our consumers, to all of you, to our communities. So it's a privilege.
It was my privilege a couple of decades ago now to our team at Future 500 worked partners with Coca-Cola and developed their first global environmental and social governance. It was called, it had 3 different letters at the time, but we called it Citizenship at Coca-Cola. And it was a combination of global reporting initiatives and about 15 other metrics that were designed to help a company move along the path from where it's been to a higher level of sustainability. At that time, ESG, environmental and social governance, now various different terms. At that time, ESG was highly criticized by the progressive activist community because it didn't demand change. It required change on the part of the company. So we tend to get a lot of criticism from the left at that time for those programs. Now, ESG has become a political football on the right, where the right is saying the same thing that the left was saying, except they think it is actually a plot of the left. Or I would say they don't believe it, but it's positioned publicly as a plot by the woke left to impose a regime on companies. What is ESG actually, if you strip out the politics?
So it's great that I can actually lean on a quote that our chairman gave, because sort of legitimize this a little bit where we stand on things. But our chairman, for instance, responding to, I guess, a similar question you just gave, which is, look, you can call that what it is, whatever you want to call it, but for us to not care about the circularity of our packaging, for us to not care about the water we use in the communities where we operate. I mean, we believe that if we do that, and we are required to do that, not because of some vernacular someone has, that's the right thing for us to do. There will be better communities, a better business for us to operate, and that's just fundamentally what we believe in.
Well, I have to tell you how inspiring it was when we heard that quote.
It's not from your, maybe I paraphrased it, but
You did very well. So now I got to ask you about, within ESG, plastic. What's been the history of plastic? Generations ago, plastic wasn't even a beverage container, then it emerged. Then, thanks to you folks, we were able to generate a tremendous amount of plastic recycling in California. We build an industry, and now plastic recycling is everywhere. But plastic is everywhere too. It's on the ocean, it's on the ground. How is Coca-Cola doing with that?
Well, I get that question a lot. It's on my mind all the time. And this is for the other panels. I thought there was some great questions from many of you. I can't really see out of the audience. I can't go into this, but it's hard for me that you work for a big brand to say publicly that there's plastic pollution crisis in the world. Like, that's not an easy thing to say. You're not part of that problem, and we are. Like, there is a plastic pollution crisis. We could certainly argue if that's a waste management problem in certain countries, if it's human responsibility or what it is. But one of the other panelists mentioned, and I think this is something I've learned, and I'm better for it today, but first of all, there's a variety of different plastics, right? We almost exclusively in our, what we call primary packaging, only use PET primarily, with some, our caps are not PET, but PET is a very recyclable material. So first and foremost, what we're trying to do is help many of you in the room and other partners. I mean, I answered someone's question earlier, and it was like, what's been the hardest thing to do here? It's like, well, it's realizing that when you're in the business, so to speak, you can fix a lot of the things you're trying to fix on your own. Like when you step into a role like this, you're like, oh my gosh, you're relying on such an incredible, vast network of different organizations, government, customers, NGOs, our peers. You all know about how competitive we are with those people in the blue uniforms. But it's amazing to me to realize we depend on each other for there to be solutions for the plastic crisis that we are part of.
They're up the sleeves.
But I mean, like this package, and listen, I'm not trying to be, trust me, I'm not that corny. But the reason I bring it up here is I realized when I was here this morning that in Texas today, this package actually is now made 100% from recycled plastic, and it's the lightest package that we have. So we've taken 4 or 5 grants out in the last year and replaced it with. So someone was talking about 100 cars. I forget what the statistic is on that, but I know it's roughly 3 billion bottles that we've taken out, 3 billion would be. And that's just the beginning, right, from the U.S. marketplace by shifting to this. And so we are going to keep on that, and that's part of what I said earlier. It's like we had an ambition 5, 7, 10 years ago, and now we've got to operationalize that ambition. And that's complex. Supply chain, procurement, suppliers, recycling. You've got to start. It's like every day, every month, every week, every year.
Yeah.
More and more.
Now, Coca-Cola is something that I think are just extraordinary in recent times. And one of them that was most interesting to me was a switch in positioning. Now, you have to clarify this for me, but switch in positioning on bottle bills. I saw that from a national perspective now, there are forms of bottle bills that Coca-Cola is positive about. Is that the case?
No.
Or am I putting you on the spot?
I'm putting you on the spot. That's why you're inviting me, I suppose. So Coca-Cola is how many? 70,000 people. We obviously we stand for and against, and we have bottlers. I would say, I wasn't necessarily here, and one of your principles was like, don't have any excuses. I love those 4 principles walking in, so we have no excuses. I would admit, I think years ago, we were generally opposed to a lot of things that were legislatively put forth as opposed to today. partnering with, I haven't met her, I've heard her speak earlier. Heidi's here. If you're in the room, Heidi here. There you go, okay. I know I'm new, and my peers speak very highly of you, but so it is about finding common grounds, right? Like the system that I enjoyed that you helped create in California when I lived there, and now I know who created that because I would take my bottles there. Like, it has room for improvement. Like the California deposits, like Oregon, if you want to go to Oregon, I think it's one of the best run recycling bottle business in the country. It's a great program. There's other public legislatively proposed programs that we would as an industry probably say we're not for. It takes way too much control out of sort of the operations of it. We don't get the material back. So yes, but we are certainly in many cases more for well-designed EPR ID that we talked about, well-designed bottle bills, but we also face a lot of poorly designed government bills, and we're not going to be for those.
And I think, when those are designed without conversation with you and dialogue with you, then they tend to not understand the business model. Now, it's not the job of activists to support the business model of the existing companies, but it sure is a lot easier to get legislation passed if you do. And so, the activists have to weigh that and decide, is this a business model that we think can be adapted so that it serves our mission? And the company has to decide, is this a change in the incentive structure of this model we want to embrace? And many times the answer, after a little conversation and a little pressure, is yes.
Yeah. I don't think about the word activism. I mean, you can look it up as English as a second speaking, as a second language. I mean, I consider ourselves sometimes activists on collection too. I mean, we set forth a goal that we want to collect and recycle, and Abraham said every bottle can that we sell by 2030. Like, that goal keeps me up every night. And some of that we're solving internally. We're investing with partners in local communities, recycling facilities. And, someone asked, like, have you really had any major failures? I think, actually, he said, like, you show up in these conversations and everyone's like saying all the great things you've always done, and no one ever like truly mentions failures. And maybe they're learned failures, things that we actually invested, I think it was close to $100 million in 2010 or 9. We built our own recycling facility. It didn't work. Because it's not our core competency. We're not recyclers, right? We're beverage marketers. But is there other ways that we can think about learning from that college, that experience, and support those recycling streams today?
And other models by which we might be able to support some of that innovation. There's always a natural thought when folks, and I love your distinction of activism and how it can be, because I meet so many activists within companies. I think there's a perception out there that people, once they are hired by a company, they become automatons, just kind of directed toward maximizing profits within the company, and they're all in lockstep. But I find that when you go inside the company, you have people who are actually human beings. Is that true? Of course.
Now, look, I was talking to Scott before the lunch and learning about, obviously, his fast. I mean, these are our customers, right? Scott's entire organization are our customers. So we have a room easily the size of this who they work with those customers, and you can pick one of the customers. And one of the things I plead with them all the time is when you're working with one of our customers, particularly those that operate more sort of closed-loop venues, or I should say closed, we call them on-premise venues. Like, all the material that gets generated in those venues, football stadiums, movie theaters, theme parks, zoos, all of it, like, we brought in expertise now, and let's help our customers where the waste goes. And we do audits, and don't just sell the value of our brands and sell the great partnerships that we can have, but also talk about, be curious, like, where does my waste go? Like, where does the Coke packaging that we serve your attendees and your fans, where does it go? Where do you send your waste? We kind of like to know that, because ideally it's going to, we talked about the circle all day today, and the circular economies. But, I mean, it's a circle that becomes this bottle again, right? That's kind of our belief. So that's an area we found with our customers.
That's a great point. And the two key takeaways from a conversation like this are, one, the partnerships that have to exist up and down value chains in order to make this work. And two, your last point, there are human beings involved. And a lot of times people will say, well, I was working with this retailer, they didn't do X, Y, or Z. The question is, who are you talking to at that? And it is very possible that someone who was adding groceries at a particular retail outlet might not actually understand the carbon footprint of every product.
Or even the lobbyists who go behind the company. Sometimes, you cannot depend on it. That's why companies want to have some controls there. So our time is just about up. But I want to remind folks that for those of you who were in the Earth Congress yesterday, Trammell and I, at the beginning of the session, announced a one-year ceasefire in the culture and political wars on climate. We are having a one-year ceasefire starting with Earth Next. And for the next year, we're going to develop what we call pro-activism and bring together a variety of organizations that want to work with companies in a positive and productive way to make 10 changes in the supply chain that many retailers are already leading on, and 3 changes in policy, including a circular economy that can transform the relationship of human consumption to the natural environment. And I look forward to the involvement of Coca-Cola, the National Retail Federation, and all the other folks out there as we pursue that. And I invite everyone here, if you're interested in participating in that, you'll have some signs up and so on. There's a text number that you can text to right now. Text EarthX to the following number, 66866, and Trammell and I will be back to you. So EarthX to 66866, but we'll be talking about that some more. You folks have helped us to understand the difference in the power when we act as persons, when we act in programs, and when we develop systems that can actually create the outline incentives so that when we engage in our own practices to support our families and our communities, we can also support the broader community. And I want to thank you for the tremendous work that I know you both bring as individual human beings. One side. Thank you very much.